I was standing behind a convenience store counter in Japan, wearing a trainee badge that felt more like a weight than a title. A customer approached, asked a simple question in rapid Japanese, and for a long, agonizing second, I just froze. Here I was, a woman who had managed complex programs at a think tank and led international NGO initiatives in Sri Lanka, completely paralyzed by a request for a plastic bag. I walked away from that job shortly after, not because the work was hard, but because the silence, the sudden, sharp realization of my own uselessness was deafening. Whenever I call home now, the conversation follows a predictable, comfortable rhythm until it hits that one inevitable question from my parents. So why don't you have a job yet? It's a question that stings, not because they are being cruel, but because they belong to a generation where productivity is the only true currency of value. To the world, and even to the official stamps on my passport, my identity in Japan has been reduced to a single, sterile word: dependent. It is a jarring, unsettling transition, going from a woman with a career and a clear sense of direction to someone whose labor is now largely invisible, performed within the quiet walls of a home in Tsukuba. We are often told that the ultimate goal of modern progress is for women to have it all, balancing the boardroom and the household. But as I navigated the move from Colombo to Latvia and finally to Japan, I began to notice a peculiar, unspoken pressure. If a woman is pressured by society and culture to be a career woman just to prove she has a right to exist, is that actually freedom? Or have we simply traded one set of expectations for an even more exhausting one? That moment of failure in the convenience store wasn't just about a language barrier. It was the start of a much deeper, more uncomfortable confrontation with a question we all eventually have to face. If you strip away your job title, your salary, and your social status, what exactly is left of you? I've spent the last year realizing that while my work changed, my worth never did. And the answer to who I am has very little to do with who is signing my paycheck.
Wow. I mean, that really just sits with you, doesn't it?
The image of this incredibly accomplished person, a think tank manager, just freezing over a plastic bag.
It's not about the bag. It's about the entire system reducing you to that single transaction and finding you. Wanting. It's a moment of profound identity collapse.
Exactly. And the word that just jumps out, the one that anchors this whole deep dive for us, is dependent. It's a legal term on a visa, it's a stamp on a passport, but it feels like, I don't know, a moral judgment.
It becomes what sociologists call a master status. It's the label that overrides everything else you've ever been. You're not a program manager anymore. You're not an analyst.
And that feeling, that personal crisis described in the opening, is actually a window into a massive systemic issue happening across East Asia. We're talking specifically about Japan and South Korea today.
We're looking at this huge collision. On one side, you have these hyper-modern, technologically advanced economies, and on the other, you have these incredibly rigid, almost ancient social structures for how they see family, gender, and work.
And highly skilled women are getting caught right in the middle of that collision. They're disappearing into this domestic sphere. They labor becoming invisible.
Which is exactly what we need to unpack. We have a whole range of materials in front of us. We've got macroeconomic analyses, some really dense stuff on GDP, satellite accounts. We've got sociological studies, immigration regulations, even some film analysis.
Right. So the plan for this deep dive is to look at this crisis through 3 specific stories or lenses to really understand why this is happening.
First, we're going to tackle the economics of it. How does a system decide that a mother's work is worth 0?
Then we're going to hit the bureaucracy, the walls of paperwork and visas that actively keep talented people on the sidelines.
And finally, the culture, the stigma, the deep-seated idea that if you don't have a paycheck, you're basically doing nothing. It's a huge topic.
Or I guess the lack of it, the macroeconomic 0.
Exactly. Let's talk about how we value or fail to value invisible labor. We have this narrative about a woman in Tokyo, an architect from Southeast Asia.
Okay.
She followed her husband for his job, so she's on a dependent visa. And in her small apartment, she's not just, relaxing. She's running an incredibly complex operation.
I can only imagine. In Japan, being a homemaker is not a simple task. I've had stories about the waste sorting systems. It's not just paper and plastic.
In some wards in Tokyo, you're looking at 10, 12, sometimes 15 different categories of trash. Burnable, non-burnable, specific types of plastic, PET bottles, lids, and labels separated. Of course, glass bottles sorted by color.
Wow. And you have to have it all out on the right day, and the right time, and the right kind of bag.
Get it wrong, and your neighbors will let you know. It's a major source of social pressure. So she's managing that. She's also managing complex nutritional needs, maybe for her kids, maybe for her husband. She's the emotional support system. She's the one who navigates the school bureaucracy, the local government office.
She's the household's chief operating officer.
100%. She is the COO, the logistics manager, the in-house therapist, the chef. And yet, when the government releases the national GDP report,
Her contribution is valued at 0.
a literal zero. It doesn't exist in the eyes of the macroeconomy. And here's the crazy part. If that same woman hired a cleaning service, a nanny, and a private chef to do the exact same work,
That would count towards GDP. That's economic growth.
that's growth. A transaction occurred, money changed hands. So the system says that paying a stranger to raise your child is economically productive, but doing it yourself is nothing. It's a leisure activity.
This goes way back, doesn't it, to how we even decided to measure economies in the first place. The whole concept of GDP.
When the modern system of national accounts, the SNA, was developed after World War II, the focus was all on industrial output: tanks, steel, cars, things you could count.
Right. The things that build a nation and win wars.
Exactly. Domestic labor was intentionally excluded, partly because it was hard to measure, but there was also a strong ideological reason. It was seen as being outside the production boundary. It was a natural resource, like the air you breathe. A family was a unit of consumption, not production.
So the man goes out and produces, the woman stays home and facilitates his consumption.
And reproduces the labor force for the next generation for free.
Yeah.
That was the implicit assumption. Now, to be fair, economists have known this is a blind spot for decades.
So how do they try to fix it?
They use something called satellite accounts. It's basically an alternative accounting system that runs alongside the official GDP. The Japanese Cabinet Office has actually done this.
How do you put a price on, sorting trash and making lunches?
There are a few methods. The most common is the market replacement cost approach. You look at all the tasks a homemaker does: cooking, cleaning, childcare, elder care, shopping, and you figure out how many hours she spends on each. Then you multiply those hours by the average market wage for a professional who does that job. So hours spent cooking times a chef's hourly wage, hours on childcare times a nanny's wage, and so on.
You add it all up and you get a ghost salary.
A ghost salary, exactly. And the numbers that come out of these satellite accounts are absolutely staggering. In Japan, some estimates put the value of this unpaid domestic work at over 100 trillion yen.
100 trillion.
That's somewhere between 20 and 27% of Japan's nominal GDP. We're talking about a quarter of the entire official economy that is just off the book.
So every year, a value equivalent to a quarter of Japan's economy is generated, mostly by women, and it just vanishes from the records.
It vanishes. It doesn't contribute to her pension. It gives her no social security. And critically, it gives her no social status. It's seen as her duty, not her work.
And the disparity in who does this work is still huge, right? Even with more women in the paid workforce.
Enormous. The government's own survey on time use and leisure activities lays it bare. Even today, Japanese women do, on average, over 2.5 hours more housework and childcare per day than men.
Per day.
Per day. That's 17.5 hours a week. That's a part-time job that only one partner is doing, on top of whatever paid work they might have.
This sounds exactly like what the Nobel-winning economist Claudia Golden talks about, but on steroids.
It's the perfect application of her theory. Golden talks about greedy jobs, right? High-paying professional jobs that demand your total availability. Long hours, unpredictable schedules. You have to be ready to jump on a plane at a moment's notice.
And she argues that these jobs pay disproportionately more, so it makes economic sense for a couple to have one person take the greedy job and the other take a more flexible, lower-paying one to handle home life.
Exactly. Now, take that concept and apply it to Japan or South Korea, where the corporate culture is arguably the greediest in the world. We're talking 60, 70-hour work weeks being normal, plus mandatory after-work drinking sessions with the boss.
The nomikai.
The nomikai. It's functionally impossible for both partners in a couple to hold one of those jobs and have a family. The system forces a choice. One person becomes the salaryman, the corporate warrior.
And the other one becomes the dependent, the one who performs that 100 trillion yen ghost work.
Which leads us directly, and I mean directly, to the birth rate crisis.
Right, because you hear politicians in Seoul and Tokyo wringing their hands about it. The birth rate in South Korea is, what is it now?
That's the lowest in the world. It's hovering around 0.72.
0.72. That's a demographic death spiral. You need 2.1 just to maintain a population.
It's catastrophic. And they keep trying to fix it with money. They offer cash bonuses for having babies, subsidies for childcare, but it doesn't work.
Because they're misdiagnosing the problem.
They are completely misdiagnosing the problem. Women are not on a birth strike, as some conservative commentators claim. They're on a labor strike. They're making a completely rational economic decision.
The cost of having a child for a woman in this system isn't just financial. It's the cost of her entire career, her autonomy, her identity.
It's the opportunity cost of becoming a ghost in the economy. And this is where you see movements like 4B popping up.
What is 4B?
4B stands for four no's in Korean. Bihan, no marriage. Bishulsun, no childbirth. Bione, no dating. And Biseksu, no sexual relationships with men.
Wow. Dream.
And it's often portrayed in the media as this radical man-hating movement. But if you look at it from a game theory perspective, it's a logical response to a rigged game. These women are saying the social contract on offer marriage and family is a terrible deal for us, so we refuse to play.
It's a silent strike, a conscious withdrawal of their labor, both domestic and reproductive, from a system that devalues it.
The comment from the woman in our source material said it perfectly. The idea of having a child feels like a financial and personal trap. That's not an emotional statement. That is a cold, hard economic calculation.
Society expects them to be the social safety net, but it refuses to pay for the net.
And that right there is the systemic blind spot. It treats the backbone of the home as if it were made of air. And that's just the economic layer. It gets even more complicated when we look at the bureaucratic walls that enforce this system.
Because even if a woman wants to fight against this, wants to work and maintain her career, she runs smack into the immigration office.
She runs into a wall of red tape. This is where we need to look at the story of Elena. Now, she's a composite character, but her situation is incredibly common. So, Elena is a highly skilled software project manager. She moves to Japan with her husband, who got a great job offer. She's not just skilled, she's multilingual. Fluent Mandarin, Russian, and her Japanese is professional level.
She sounds like the exact kind of person a labor-starved country would be desperate to hire.
But her visa says dependent, and that one word changes everything.
What does that practically mean for her job search?
On paper, it's not a total ban. Dependents can apply for a special permission to engage in activities other than those permitted by the visa status. It's called Shikokugai Katsudo Kyoka.
And what does that permission allow?
It allows her to work, but, and this is the entire trap in a nutshell, it comes with a hard limit. 28 hours per week.
28, there's that number again.
It's the magic number. It's designed to ensure any work you do is supplementary, not primary. It's pocket money. You cannot be a software project manager for 28 hours a week.
No serious tech company is going to give you a leadership role on a part-time basis like that.
Never. The structure of the work doesn't allow for it. So this visa, this single regulation, effectively de-skills her. It pushes a highly qualified project manager towards jobs that fit into that 28-hour box.
Working the register at a convenience store.
Exactly. Or an English conversation cafe, or maybe some low-level data entry, jobs that don't use any of her actual skills.
So she's stuck in this loop. She's sitting in a park during the day, as the story goes, watching all the business people rush by, feeling like a ghost.
She's a ghost in a labor-starved economy. And let's say she tries to break out. She says, okay, I'm not going to be a dependent anymore. I'm going to find a company to sponsor me for my own proper work visa.
She hits another wall, doesn't she?
A huge one. The infamous native speaker bias.
Yes.
A company might be looking for someone with global business skills. The job ad says, business-level English required. Elena has that and more. But the unwritten rule, the one the HR department operates on, is that they want a native English speaker.
Which is often just code for someone who is white from a specific set of countries?
Yes, it's a filter. Elena, with her Russian and Mandarin fluency, is actually far more qualified for a role dealing with the global market. But because she isn't a native speaker from the US or the UK, her resume gets tossed before it's even read.
And then there's credentialism.
Well, the credentialism is brutal. Her master's degree from a top university in Europe, her years of project management experience in another country. The Japanese system is intensely skeptical of foreign credentials.
They want you to have a degree from a Japanese university or a specific Japanese certification for your field.
Right. So to get back to the level she was at, she would essentially have to start over, go back to school, get recertified. It's another de-skilling mechanism. All of this combines to create what some researchers like Bosch-Lazada call the feminization of poverty among these migrant spouses.
It's not just about a lower income, it's about a total loss of economic agency.
A total loss. And the psychological toll is immense. The research on this is just heartbreaking. It talks about women falling into a state of learned helplessness.
Text.
It means you try. You polish your resume, you apply for dozens, hundreds of jobs you know you're qualified for, and you get rejected again and again and again because of your visa or your name or your non-native accent.
After a while, you just stop trying.
You stop trying. You internalize the message the system is sending you. You are not wanted here. Your skills have no value. The study quotes women describing the feeling of becoming a non-person. One even said she felt like she had become an animal because she was completely dependent on her husband for food and shelter, unable to earn for herself.
That is just devastating.
And women develop these coping strategies. Some try to find dignity in another label. They enroll in a PhD program, not because they need another degree, but because being a student feels better than being a dependent.
It's a holding pattern.
It's a very expensive holding pattern. Others turn to the gray market, the informal economy, tutoring for cash, selling crafts online, doing online surveys for gift cards, anything to have a little bit of their own money, their own agency.
And all of this is happening against the backdrop of Japan's demographic crisis.
That's the supreme irony of it all. The government is in a full-blown panic about the shrinking workforce. They're talking about raising the retirement age to 70. They created a whole new visa category, the specified skilled worker, to bring in hundreds of thousands of blue-collar workers from countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, Nepal.
To work in sectors like construction, agriculture, elder care.
The exact sectors where they have a critical labor shortage. So the government is spending huge amounts of money and political capital to import new workers.
Meanwhile, they have this pre-existing pool of highly educated, highly skilled, multilingual women already in the country.
Who are married to high-earning professionals, meaning they're stable, they're integrated, they're not a flight risk.
And the system legally prevents them from working to their full potential.
It's economic malpractice on a national scale. It shows that the system's priority is not actually solving the labor shortage.
The priority is maintaining the traditional social order.
The priority is preserving the male breadwinner, female-dependent family model. The system would rather have an engineer sitting in a park than allow her to compete with Japanese men for a high-status job. It prefers a quiet housewife to a lead engineer.
Which brings us to the third and, honestly, probably the deepest layer of this problem, the culture.
The cultural stigma. Yeah, you can change the visa laws, you can reform GDP calculations, but changing the way a society thinks about work and worth, that's the real mountain to climb.
So let's talk about the Confucian work ethic. But what does it really mean in this modern context?
Well, it's a bit of a misnomer because it's not exactly what Confucius was talking about, but it's this modern synthesis. In the West, particularly in Protestant cultures, the work ethic is often very individualistic. You work hard to prove your own worth, for your own salvation, for self-actualization.
It's about personal achievement.
Right. In East Asia, the cultural DNA is different. The modern work ethic that developed in Japan, Korea, China, it's deeply tied to the group. You don't work hard just for yourself.
Yeah.
You work hard as an obligation to your family, your company, and your nation.
Your work is a reflection on the group's honor.
Exactly. Your success brings honor to the family. Your failure brings shame. So in that context, not having a job isn't just an economic state.
It's a moral failing.
It's a profound moral failing. You are seen as failing in your duty to the collective. You are not pulling your weight. This is why the question, so what do you do at a family gathering, is so incredibly loaded.
Which brings us to the third story, the one about the Lunar New Year dinner.
So we have this woman, a former high-flying consultant. She's now a stay-at-home mother in Osaka. And she's at the big family dinner. Her relatives are going around the table praising her cousins for their latest promotions and new projects.
And when it gets to her, what is there to say?
In the calculus of this modern urban Confucianism, her identity evaporated the moment she stopped getting a paycheck. She has no title on a business card. She has no output to report. Her immense, invisible labor at home doesn't register.
So she's just her husband's wife, her children's mother. She has no independent value.
In the eyes of her relatives, she has no contribution to the family's honor. And you can just feel the weight of that condescending question. So what do you do all day?
It's a question that implies the answer is nothing.
And this cultural pressure is everywhere. You see it reflected so clearly in the region's cinema, especially in South Korean films.
You mean like Parasite?
Parasite is the ultimate text for this. But the theme goes way back. You can look at Kim Ki-young's classic 1960 film The Housemaid and its 2010 remake. The domestic worker is always this figure of anxiety.
The intimate outsider.
That's the perfect term for it. The housekeeper, the nanny, or by extension, the non-working wife, is physically inside the most private space. She knows all the family secrets. She handles the dirty laundry.
But she's not really part of the family. She's an employee. Or in the wife's case, she's a dependent. She's socially invisible.
And in these films, she's despised. She's disposable. She's essential for the wealthy family to function, but she's treated as subhuman. And this is where Parasite is so brilliant.
Because it flips the whole idea of dependency on its head.
It completely inverts it. The title, Parasite, refers to the poor Kim family who infiltrate the wealthy Park family's home. They're seen as leeches feeding off the rich.
But the movie makes it very clear that the Parks are the truly dependent ones.
They are utterly helpless. Mrs. Park can't cook a simple meal of ramdon without her housekeeper. Mr. Park can't get to work without his driver. They are completely parasitic on the labor of the people they look down on.
It's a perfect allegory for the salaryman who looks down on his dependent wife, even though he would be completely unable to function without the invisible labor she performs every single day.
He is the parasite on her labor, but the economic and cultural systems are set up to label her as the dependent one, the drain on resources. It creates this intense cognitive dissonance, this feeling of being simultaneously essential and worthless.
And this creates a terrible double bind for women, doesn't it?
It's the ultimate lose-lose scenario. If a woman focuses on her career, works hard, becomes successful, society starts to criticize her. In China, she's labeled a Xingnu, a leftover woman.
In Korea, she might be called a gold miss. Too educated, too successful, too intimidating for a man to marry.
Right, so she's punished for succeeding in the professional world. But if she makes the other choice, if she gets married and steps back from her career to raise a family,
then she becomes the useless dependent we've been talking about. She's criticized for not working.
She can't win. The rules are designed to ensure she can't win. It's a powerful mechanism of social control that keeps the patriarchal structure in place.
I think it's a triple lock.
A triple lock. Lock number one is economic. A GDP system that is fundamentally blind to the value of care. It literally counts it as zero.
Lock number two is bureaucratic, a visa and immigration system that puts a hard cap on ambition, trapping skilled women in a 28-hour cage.
And lock number three, the strongest one of all, is cultural. A deep-seated, shame-based social mindset that says your human worth is directly proportional to the size of your paycheck.
And the woman described in our opening passage, standing frozen in that convenience store, she's feeling all three of those locks snap shut at once.
In that one moment, yeah. The paralysis she feels isn't about the Japanese language. It's the sudden, crushing realization of her uselessness as defined by this entire system. The market looked at her and the market said trainee. It said error.
It's a total erasure of her past self, her competent professional self.
But the most important line in that whole opening is what comes at the end, after she's processed all of this.
I spent the last year realizing that while my work changed, my worth never did.
That, right there, that is the act of resistance. That's her personal revolution. It's an internal refusal to accept the system's valuation of her.
It's an incredibly powerful thought, but it must be so hard to hold on to that belief when your passport, your bank account, and your own family are all telling you the opposite.
It's a daily struggle. And for many women, the only way to express that resistance on a larger scale is the silent strike we talked about. The decision to not marry, to not have children, to simply withdraw from the game.
They're voting with their absence. If the system won't value their presence, their labor, their care, they'll take it away.
And the demographic cliff that Japan and South Korea are heading towards is the direct result of that collective choice. The ghosts in the economy are becoming the ghosts of the future.
It's so frustrating because the solutions seem so obvious, even if they're not easy. It's not about just throwing money at people to have kids.
No, it's about fundamental reform. It's about officially incorporating unpaid labor into national accounts. It's about abolishing the 28-hour rule for skilled dependent spouses. It's about companies creating a culture that doesn't demand 70-hour work weeks.
It's about men doing their fair share of the housework.
That might be the biggest one. And it's about changing the cultural conversation, stopping the stigmatization of care work.
It makes you rethink the whole narrative of 20th century feminism, in a way.
It does. We spent a century focused on the goal of getting women out of the home and into the paid workforce as a path to liberation.
Leaning in.
Leaning in. And that was and is incredibly important. But maybe we were so focused on opening the door to the office that we forgot to change the value of the work that was still being done inside the house.
So did we actually liberate anyone?
Or did we just teach women that the only part of themselves that has value is the part that can be measured, monetized, and taxed? Perhaps the next great revolution isn't about leaning in more at work. Maybe it's about forcing the world to recognize the immense value of what happens when we lean in at home.